The philosophy of YouTube.
Today we're going to be looking at a video that's a little bit older, but I think the message is still relevant today. And just so that I can cover some bases here, the person that made this video looks like has gone through some individual changes, and I just want to stress that my views are going to be about the content of the video and not really about this person as an individual. So if I attribute anything to them that is incorrect, just take that with a grain of salt, please, and have a little grace. And let's jump into the meat of what we have to take a look at here.
At Summer in the City 2017, the big online video convention that happens here in the UK, I went to a panel called Bullying and Harassment on YouTube.
So that's our topic for today, bullying and harassment on YouTube, and what to do about that. First off, I'll throw out here, I'm pretty sure, well, at least I can speak for myself, and I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of people, if you were to ask them if they were pro or con, or if they were in favor or against bullying or harassment on YouTube, they'd say that they're against that. I just wanted to preface with that.
I think the way we talk about bullying and harassment on YouTube is a little limited.
Interesting. I'm fascinated by that take, and I'm really interested to hear how you think bullying should be viewed and taken on the platform.
That panel was really good, and the panelists had a lot of interesting things to say, but it focused a lot on how can YouTubers respond to bullying harassment. And I think that perspective, a little bit too much, treats those behaviors as inevitable.
Which behaviors? People being rude? People being rude online as like an extender of that? Because in a way there, I think that these things might be inevitable, and I know we're going to go a little bit more into detail here, but how do you eliminate those things from the platform? If your case is that people are being rude on the internet, and I think that teaching people how to respond to that makes it sound like it's inevitable that people will be rude on the internet, my response to that is, yeah. I think that people being rude in real life is inevitable, and I think it's even more inevitable on the internet.
In her book, The Cultural Politics of Emotion, the philosopher Sarah Ahmed talks about pain and warns that fetishizing pain, turning pain into an object, can sometimes obscure the processes and the people that cause that pain to come about.
Maybe I don't understand what you're saying here, but who's doing that in this case? I feel like you need to lay out who you're talking about before we just jump into what they're doing, because I don't really follow. Are the bullies doing this, or is it the people that are bullied? Is it the victim, or is it the oppressor? I don't understand who's fetishizing the pain. Is it us fetishizing the pain because we think it's inevitable? I don't get it.
By fetishizing pain, she means making an idol of it, treating it as a standalone thing, not any kind of sexual fetish. And I think that if we're not careful, we run the risk of fetishizing the pain of bullying and harassment online, treating it as a given, as a standalone thing, rather than a product almost, that people are spending time and energy making and that they shouldn't be.
Interesting. That's a perspective. People do spend time and energy bullying other people and harassing other people, but I don't understand how that doesn't make it also an inevitable thing. I think that two things can be true at the same time. A product can exist that someone creates, but also that thing can be inevitable. I just don't see how they're really connected in that way. I'm interested to hear more.
I use the word product advisedly, in fact, because bullying and harassment on YouTube, it's possible to make a career out of that. You can make a pretty decent living spreading misery on YouTube for sport, and you can make money for Google while you're doing it.
Oh, okay. So it's like Google's fault? Google's profiting off these bullies, and therefore Google should be a little bit more responsible? That seems to be the implication. But let's get to the real gravy of this here, and that is, what is bullying and what is harassment? And you can pull up a dictionary definition, but the problem is, what we define as bullying is subjective. It's something that can't be just nailed down, and it's not black and white. You can't just decide for other people what is bullying. What is bullying to one person might be criticism or constructive or legitimate criticism to another. You know, there's a lot of things that go into it. And even if you jump into the definitions of bullying and you start saying, well, it's like the harassment of somebody. Okay, well, what counts as harassment? Where are we drawing the lines here? And that's the big contention that I have with this video. And as I was watching it, I found myself shaking my head, because these things all sound good, but you're talking in platitudes. You're not saying anything. Words are coming out of your mouth, but you're not actually saying anything. You just keep saying bullying is bad, and bullying shouldn't be inevitable, but sorry, bullying is inevitable, especially when you allow a subjective definition. The only way that we could really eliminate bullying from a platform like YouTube would be if we clearly defined bullying and there was no wiggle room there. You couldn't look at something and have one person say that's bullying and then another person say, hey, I don't think that's bullying. As long as two people can come to different conclusions about what you're offering or what you're putting out there, it's going to keep happening because somebody will define it that way on a platform that billions of people use. It's just going to happen.
On that panel I mentioned, Rowan said that YouTube needs to figure out whether it's going to just be a platform and allow anybody to use it for any reason, or whether they are going to stand for something and be a little bit more discerning in how they allow it to be used. And I think that's quite right.
And personally, I think that they should keep it as a platform. I think that it should just be a platform. I don't think we need people to come in here and start telling us what is and isn't okay and what is bullying and what isn't bullying. There's almost a little bit of mind reading going on when there's that. How do you know? How can you read someone's intentions and then assign what they're doing? We define ourselves. Other people don't define us. What I am is what I am, not what you think I am, because you don't know anything about these people, and maybe you're not fully into this field. And where do we draw the line, too, between bullying and, let's say, comedy art? What if a comic gets up and says something that is making some people upset? That's kind of what comics do a lot of the time. Should they be pulled at the first sign of somebody reporting something like that to fight bullying? This is kind of the problem with letting Google have too much power here. And even if we agree, even if we grant that Google is really good at removing bullies, like legitimate bullying from the platform, what if they're not good at it tomorrow or the next day or a week later? Are we going to really hand over that ability to them so that they can just curate everything that's on their website so it's like their own little news company? No, I don't think we should do that. I think the beauty of YouTube and why YouTube works and why it grew like it did is because it's freedom, man. You can go on there and you can put whatever you want on there as long as it's not breaking the law and some pretty general terms and conditions. That's kind of the way it should work. We shouldn't be getting more and more specific with our rules because you know what they say, more rules, more corruption. That's just the truth of it.
That doesn't fetishize bullying and harassment, it challenges Google to confront the people responsible. A more ideal solution than fetishization, I think, would be to confront the people who are perpetrating this kind of behavior.
Well, let me stop you right there, because I know that you called it fetishization, but that's not what... I'll take the mantle of the other team, I guess, here. That's not what we would call it. I wouldn't call it fetishization. I would say that I am also against harassment and bullying, but I'm scared that you will cast a net that's so wide over all content that you would consider bullying or harassment, and I think that there are going to be innocent people, a lot of innocent people caught in this net, and they will be punished. And I think that hurts YouTube as a whole, and when YouTube's hurt, it hurts all the viewers as well. You're hurting the ability for people to create content and put content out there. And I get it, you're like, well, maybe hateful content shouldn't be there. Define hateful. Just define it for me then. Define it in a black and white way so that we can point at somebody very clearly and prove that what they're doing is hateful. But if you can't do that, and you can't do that because maybe 10,000 people will say it's hateful, well, 15,000 will say it's not hateful. So now what? What do we do now? Side with the 10,000? 15,000 disagree with that stance. Are we punishing now 15,000 people? What if the criticism is valid? What if we start trying to criticize companies and then companies say, you know, I think that you're kind of harassing us. I know that we kind of screwed you on this deal, but I think that you're kind of harassing us by making a video about how the product we made isn't very good, so I'm going to report it and get you pulled off. We shouldn't be drawing lines like this. There's a little too much wiggle room for abuse when we start making rules based on subjective things. Rules need to be objective. They need to be black and white, and they need to be very clear about what the infringements are and what the enforcements are in response to that infringement. We can't have it up to people's feelings because people's feelings change by the day, and people can fake feelings, and their feelings are valid, but they're subjective. You're the only one that feels them. We shouldn't go into a restaurant and tell them that they can only serve pepperoni pizza because that's the only food that you like.
And let them know that it needs to stop. That's why I really enjoyed this video from Emily Eaton, who talks about bullying and harassment on YouTube not as a feature of the platform, but as an abuse of the platform.
Yeah, who who disagrees that bullying is an abuse of the platform, this is a weird straw man on your part, Philosophy Tube, because the real argument from the other side is you say bullying and harassment is bad, and you guys don't think bullying and harassment is bad. But the real argument is you say bullying and harassment is bad, and we say, hey, we agree, but we disagree with your ability to fairly decide what is bullying and what is not bullying. We don't think that you should be the decider for everyone's content. It's too much power for one person, and there's millions of videos being uploaded every day. How are you going to enforce that fairly? If you can't enforce it fairly, I don't know if it should be enforced. Personal opinion there on the end.
Although I think that tools that creators get, like mute buttons and block buttons, are really good, I don't think those are just on their own the solution.
You know what the solution is? Mind your own business and understand that when a random person makes something on the internet about you, you shouldn't take it personal because that's a random person on the internet. You shouldn't be super sensitive to what people on the internet that you've never met, never will meet, and don't even know anything about, and they don't know anything about you. You shouldn't be super sensitive to what they're saying. It's kind of weird that you'd be sensitive to that, I think, personally. Oh, is that bullying? Should I be removed because I said that was kind of a weird opinion? Uh-oh.
The writer Evgeny Morozov talks about the tendency that we, people who work in tech fields, have to think that the solution to any problem is just like more technology, just chuck more technology at it. And I'm reminded of a phrase that Microsoft's Vice President of Research, Peter Lee, said when Microsoft made that Twitter bot, the automated Twitter bot that just tweeted out a whole bunch of abuse. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. And your solution to that is to then try to control what millions of people are allowed to say on the internet? That's your response to the Twitter bot? How about if we see something that's a very blatant breach of the terms and conditions or the law, we can remove those things. But how about you don't try to jump in and down people's throats and try to control them because of what? A couple of trolls on the internet that say provocative things specifically to get a response from you? You're playing into their game.
After that happened, he released a statement and he said, the challenges are just as much social as they are technical, which is, well, yeah, spot on.
Right. Human beings are social creatures, and we're interacting with each other in a social way online. And you know what we've all kind of agreed as a society is kind of weird? We've decided that it's a little weird to try to regulate how people interact with each other socially. We've decided that it's not okay for me to get involved with how you talk to your friends in a voluntary transaction. And it is a voluntary transaction. You don't have to be there on the platform. Follow the company's terms and services, and as long as no one's breaking the law or those terms and services, that's fine. But follow through what the suggestion here is and what the implication is. I know it sounds good to say, yeah, well, I'm against bullying and harassment. Yeah, I am too. I don't think you should be labeling those things, though. I don't think you are a smart enough person. I don't think anybody is a smart enough person to make that distinction for 7 billion people. I just don't think that's the case.
The tendency to abuse people online is sometimes chalked up to the internet's ability to facilitate anonymity. And I'm not sure if I totally buy into that.
Why? How could you not buy into that? Of course it's anonymity. That's literally the separation. Well, that and you're not face to face with the person, so you can't be hit with a physical response. But the anonymity is of course a huge aspect of it, because people will say things provocatively on purpose because they know that the blowback can't hit them because they're anonymous. So they'll say things just to get a rise out of you because that's the real game and you are falling for it.
I think certainly there is something disinhibitory about the internet, whether that's the speed and the immediacy of it, or whether that's the fact that it's often text-based rather than face-to-face, I don't know.
You're right. I'm sure those things definitely factor in, but here's the thing. So if it's text-based, now what are we going to do? What if someone starts typing something that could be interpreted one way, but also could be interpreted a different way? Because in text, you can't read an emotion. So if I said something to you in a very gruff, mean voice, you can tell by the tone of my voice that what I'm saying to you is rude. But if I say it in a really nice voice, then how do you know? It might be a nice thing that I'm saying. And when you're looking at text, how many times, for all you guys who use Twitter, I know I like to use Twitter, at YesterVark1, for all you guys that use Twitter, how many times has someone like tweeted at you, or have you've tweeted at somebody and then they respond and they're hostile because they had just assumed that what you're tweeting or what was tweeted was hostile, but it wasn't. It wasn't intended that way. It's just that people interpret things in a subjective way.
I will say that the worst harasser I ever had actually used his real name, and was not altogether strident in covering up his tracks either. But I did some pretty quick Google foo and found out that they were a 42-year-old part-time financial consultant living in Boston who writes Dracula fanfiction and enjoys long-distance running. So I don't know if it's necessarily an anonymity thing.
What? Did you just dox somebody?
Sort of thing. Those are steps that don't fetishize the pain, but actually directly confront the labor that produces it. And those sorts of avenues are the ones that I'm more interested in exploring when we talk about bullying and harassment on YouTube.
The moral of the story is that I don't trust you to make this decision for all of us. I don't think you can define bullying and harassment, and I don't like that you never defined it in your video either. I think that's disingenuous, and I think it completely misses the point, and it makes what your video entirely just all surface. Is the point of your video that you're against bullying and harassment and Google should stop bullying and harassment? Brava. Everybody does. Now define bullying and harassment. Throw out some examples, because that is where people are going to start disagreeing with you, and that is where you're going to start casting the net a little too wide. And I think that's wrong. Real quick, if you like the video, of course, like, comment, and subscribe. And I'm moving some of my videos over to some other channels that'll have some links down in the description. Some that are more like this, I guess, where they're more like contemporary political views, and some where it's more like video game stuff. So check out those links if you guys are interested in a little bit more content. Of course, this channel, though, is the focus, so there's probably going to be less uploads on that one.